The world of Lunara floated like a pale blue gem in the endless black of space. From orbit, it looked calm and bright, with oceans like soft glass and forests that shimmered in silver light. To those who lived there, Lunara was not just a home. It was a promise. A promise of peace, of balance, of life lived without the noise of war. The Lunarans, tall and graceful beings with voices soft as song, had never known great conflict. Their lives were built on harmony with nature and trust in each other. Their cities rose gently into the skies, made of crystal towers that caught the light of their twin suns. Gardens hung in the air, feeding the people with fruits and grains. Music was part of daily life, drifting through the air as families worked, studied, and shared meals together. But peace had made them fragile. They had no armies, no weapons beyond tools for hunting and farming. For centuries, they believed such things were unnecessary. The stars they thought would never send them harm, they were wrong. It began with a shadow across the sky. Great ships, black and sharp like broken blades, descended through the clouds. The Draxal Dominion had come. The Draxal were known across many worlds. They conquered without mercy, taking resources, land, and lives. To them, weak planets were nothing but spoils. And Lunara, shining and defenseless, was an easy prize. The first attacks were swift. The Draxal broke through the skies with fire, shattering the crystal towers of Lunara's outer cities. Families fled into the forests, but the Draxal hunted them with machines that burned trees to ash. Those who were captured were chained and taken to serve as laborers. The Lunarans had never faced such cruelty. Their leaders, the High Council, gathered in the Grand Hall of Aurelia, the capital city. The hall was lit by glowing stones, but their soft light seemed weak against the fear in every heart. Councillor Saren, the eldest among them, raised his trembling hands. "We cannot fight them," he said, his voice breaking. "Our people will not survive if we try." "But what choice do we have?" asked Councillor Morel, her eyes wet with tears. "They are burning our homes. They are taking our children. If we do nothing, we will vanish." The council fell silent. They knew Morel was right, yet their world had no weapons, no soldiers. They were a people of song and spirit, not war. At last, the youngest of the council, a woman named Lyra, stood. Her voice was soft but steady. "We cannot match the Draxal with strength, but perhaps the stars will hear us. Perhaps someone, somewhere, will come if we ask." The others turned to her, uncertain. "Ask?" Saren whispered. "Who would hear us? Who would answer?" Lyra looked toward the high dome above them, where the stars shone faintly through the crystal. "We will send our cry into the void. We will not ask for power, only for help. If there is kindness beyond our skies, let it find us." The council hesitated, but finally they agreed. In the days that followed, the Lunarans worked together on a great project. They built a signal beacon, rising tall from the heart of Aurelia. They poured into it not only their technology but their hopes. Their engineers shaped crystal into amplifiers. Their musicians wove coded messages into sound, and their children painted the beacon with symbols of peace. When the beacon shone for the first time, it glowed like a star itself. The Lunarans gathered around as Lyra's voice carried into the sky. "We are the people of Lunara. We are peaceful and weak. We are under attack. If there is anyone among the stars who hears us, come. We do not ask for conquest. We ask only for safety, please. Hear our cry." The beacon pulsed, sending the message across the void again and again. The Lunarans bowed their heads in silence. Days passed, then weeks. The Draxal raids grew bolder and hope began to fade. Many whispered that no one would come, that the stars were too wide and empty. But Lyra did not give up. Each night she stood beneath the beacon, speaking the message once more, her voice steady even as her people wept. Far, far away across a gulf of stars, the message found another world. That world was Earth. On Earth, the signal was picked up by a deep space listening station high in the mountains. The operators at first thought it was random noise, but when they decoded it, the words struck them with quiet shock. "An alien call," one of them whispered. "A real one. They're asking for help." The news spread quickly to scientists, leaders, and finally, to ordinary people. The cry of Lunara touched something deep within the human heart. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone. Now, not only did they know others existed, they knew those others were suffering. Across Earth, debates began. Some said it was too far, too dangerous. Others said Earth had enough problems of its own. But louder still were the voices that said, We cannot ignore them. If they asked us, it means no one else came. If we don't answer, who will? And so, for the first time, Earth prepared to send not explorers, not colonists, but protectors. Back on Lunara, despair was growing. The Draxel had captured more cities. Families lived in fear, hiding in caves and forests. The Council feared that soon Aurelia itself would fall. Then one night, as Lyra stood again at the beacon, she saw something new in the sky. Not the sharp black ships of the Draxol, but smaller, different craft. Glowing with controlled fire, moving with precision. The people gathered, pointing and gasping. Is it more conquerors? Some whispered. Or is it an answer? The ships descended slowly, settling on the fields outside Aurelia. From them stepped figures unlike any the Lunarans had ever seen. They were shorter than the Lunarans, broader in build, their bodies wrapped in strange armor. Their eyes were sharp, their movements strong, their faces marked by lines of hardship. Compared to the soft, graceful Lunarans, these newcomers looked like creatures of stone and iron. Fear rippled through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children close. Counselor Saren whispered, "They are monsters." But Lyra looked closer. The strangers did not raise weapons. They did not shout or strike. Instead, they carried supplies, boxes of food, medicine, tools. And one of them, with dark eyes full of resolve, spoke in a voice deep and clear. "We heard you. We came." The Lunarans stared in silence, caught between awe and fear. The strangers looked like monsters, yes, but monsters who had answered a cry for help. And so the first meeting between Lunara and Earth began. The people of Lunara stood frozen in the fields as the human ships cooled in the night air. Steam hissed from the landing pads and lights flickered along the hulls. No one moved. The Lunarans clung to each other, unsure if they had been saved or if they had invited a new danger. The humans stepped forward in groups. Their boots pressed heavily into the soft silver grass, leaving deep prints. Their armor clinked as they walked, and strange tools hung from their belts. To the Lunarans, who wore flowing robes and light fabrics, the humans looked more like walking machines than living beings. Their leader was a tall man with close-cut hair and sharp eyes. His expression was serious, almost fierce. When he spoke, his voice carried deep across the field. "We heard your message," he said. "We came to help." The words were translated through devices the humans carried. The Lunarans understood, but the tone still made them tremble. The humans sounded like thunder compared to their soft, song-like voices. Counselor Saren whispered, "They are too rough, too loud. Can such creatures truly protect us?" Lyra, standing beside him, did not answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the humans. Yes, they looked like monsters, hard, scarred, built for struggle. But hadn't the stars sent them here? Didn't that mean something? The Lunarans watched as the humans unloaded their supplies. They opened containers filled with food, water filters, and medicines. They set up strange tents with glowing panels that powered lights and machines. Some of the human crew moved quickly to treat Lunaran families who were weak or injured. The Lunarans whispered among themselves. These strangers did not act like the Draxol. They did not take or destroy. They gave, and yet the fear did not vanish. Children clung to their parents, hiding behind their robes, peeking out only when they thought no one noticed. One little boy tugged at Lyra's hand and whispered, "Are they beasts, Counselor, or are they guardians?" Lyra knelt to meet his eyes. "We do not know yet," she answered softly. "But they came when no one else did. We must wait and see." That night the humans gathered with the Lunaran Council inside the grand crystal hall of Aurelia. The Lunarans sat with calm posture, their glowing robes trailing across the smooth floor. The humans stood tall, armored and tense, their faces lit by the hall's gentle light. The contrast was sharp. The Lunarans looked like beings of light and air, while the humans seemed carved from stone and fire. The leader of the humans introduced himself as Commander Elias Ward. "We are from Earth," he said. "Your message reached us. We saw your need. We are not conquerors. We came because no one deserves to be crushed." Counselor Saren leaned forward, frowning. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? What do you want in return?" Ward shook his head. "We want nothing. On Earth we know struggle. We know what it is to be threatened, to fight for every step forward. When we heard your cry, we saw ourselves." That was enough. The Lunarans exchanged glances. They were not used to such direct words. To them, kindness was usually soft, gentle, wrapped in songs. But the humans' kindness was blunt, almost heavy. as if it had been hammered into shape by hardship. In the days that followed, the humans began to study Lunara. They sent small drones into the forest, mapping the land. They walked through ruined villages, taking notes, building plans. Everywhere they went, the Lunarans watched from a distance, whispering. Some Lunarans said, "They are too harsh. Their eyes burn like storms." Others said, "Perhaps storms are what we need." Lyra often walked among them, speaking with the humans, asking questions. She learned that their world, Earth, was not peaceful like Lunara. It was a place of mountains and oceans, storms and quakes, and history filled with conflict. To survive, humans had grown strong, clever, and stubborn. One evening, as they stood near the beacon tower, Lyra asked Commander Ward, "Do you ever tire of struggle? Do you not wish to live in peace as we did?" Ward looked at her for a long moment. "We do wish for peace, but on Earth peace was never free. We had to fight for it again and again. That fight made us what we are." Lyra studied him, then said softly, "Perhaps that is why the stars sent you. You carry the strength we do not." The first sign of human difference came during a small crisis. A Lunaran village on the edge of the Silver Forest was struck by a sudden storm. The winds tore through the crystal homes, collapsing several. The villagers cried out in fear, many trapped inside. The humans reacted at once. They rushed into the storm without hesitation, using their machines and sheer strength to pull people free. Where the Lunarans would have waited for the storm to pass, the humans fought against it. They cut through fallen beams, lifted heavy stones, carried the weak on their backs. When the storm finally ended, dozens of lives had been saved. The villagers gathered, staring at the dripping, mud-stained humans. To the Lunarans, such force, such will, seemed almost frightening. But it was also awe-inspiring. For the first time, whispers began to change. "They may look like monsters," some said, "but monsters with hearts." Not everyone trusted them. Some Lunarans still believed the humans too dangerous. Counselor Saren especially warned the others. "They are strong, yes," he said in a meeting, "but their strength is wild. If they turned against us, what could stop them? Have we traded one conqueror for another?" Lyra answered gently, "I have spoken with them, Saren. They are not like the Draxel. They give without asking. They fight storms not for themselves, but for us. Perhaps we should learn from them, not fear them." The council did not fully agree, but they did not order the humans to leave. For now, they would wait and watch. The humans began teaching the Lunarans. They showed them how to build shelters that could withstand storms, how to store food safely, how to spot dangers before they grew. They were patient in their own way. Though their voices were louder, their methods sharper than the Lunarans were used to. At first, the Lunarans struggled. They were not used to carrying heavy loads or moving quickly or working under strict commands. But as days passed, they began to see small changes. Children who had once been frail could now run farther. Farmers learned to turn tools into simple defenses. Villagers who had always hidden at the sound of danger now stood a little taller. The Lunarans whispered to each other, amazed. "We are changing," they said. "The monsters are teaching us to be strong." Yet the shadow of the Draxal still hung over them. Scouts reported that the enemy was gathering once more, preparing a larger strike. Fear spread through the villages. The Lunarans had never won a battle, not once. One night, as the twin moons rose, Lyra stood with Commander Ward on the edge of the city. She looked out over the quiet fields, glowing in silver light. "Do you truly believe we can stand against them?" she asked. Ward crossed his arms, his gaze firm. "I believe nothing is impossible if we stand together. You may see us as monsters. That's fine. Monsters can scare enemies. But remember this, monsters can also protect." Lyra smiled faintly. For the first time since the invasion began, hope stirred in her heart. The Lunarans did not know it yet, but the galaxy would soon whisper of Earth. Already, the first stories were forming. Stories of a gentle world crying for help, and of strange rough beings who came in answer. Were they monsters? Perhaps, but monsters who carried light into darkness. Monsters who fought storms and saved lives. Monsters who might just become the guardians the stars had promised. And as the Draxal fleet moved closer once again, the Lunarans waited, not in silence, not in despair, but with new strength growing inside them, for the stars had heard their cry, and Earth had answered. The days after the humans' arrival passed quickly. The Lunarans had never seen such restless energy before. The humans rarely stayed still. From sunrise to nightfall they worked, repaired, built, and trained. Their loud voices echoed through the crystal streets of Aurelia, their heavy boots leaving marks on the smooth ground. At first, the Lunarans found it strange, even disturbing. They were a people of quiet tasks and gentle songs. Their work was slow, graceful, and filled with patience. The humans were the opposite, fast, rough, and sharp in every movement. But slowly, curiosity replaced fear. The Lunarans began to watch closely, and then the humans invited them to join. The first training sessions were clumsy. Commander Elias Ward gathered a group of young Lunarans in an open field. The grass shimmered like silver beneath the twin suns. The humans stood in their heavy armor, looking like stone giants. The Lunarans wore their light robes, their delicate hands unused to carrying weight. Ward pointed to a pile of farming tools. Hoes, sickles, wooden poles, even broken parts of old machines. "Your world has no weapons," Ward said, his deep voice firm. "But anything can be made into a weapon if you use it right. A stick, a stone, even your own hands." The Lunarans looked at each other nervously. To them, the idea of using tools for harm seemed unnatural. Lyra, who had joined the session, raised her hand. "We are not a people of war. How can we fight like this?" Ward's eyes softened slightly. "I understand. But listen, fighting is not always about destroying. It is about protecting. Protect your families. Protect your homes. Protect the life you wish to keep. That is why you must learn." His words settled in their hearts. Slowly, the Lunarans stepped forward and lifted the tools. Their hands shook, but they tried. The training was difficult. The humans made them run across the fields, carry heavy stones, and practice striking wooden posts. The Lunarans grew tired quickly, their bodies not used to such demands. Some stumbled, some complained, and some wanted to quit, but the humans did not let them. Sergeant Mara, a tall woman with braided hair, barked commands with a voice like iron. "Again! Faster! Don't stop now, you are stronger than you think." At first, the Lunarans thought she was cruel. But after days passed, something began to change. Their legs grew steadier. Their arms could lift more. Their breathing became deeper. When they struck the posts, the sound was louder, sharper. Lyra noticed the difference. The people who once ran from every shadow now stood straighter. Their voices no longer trembled when speaking of the Draxol. Hope, once faint, was beginning to grow roots. The humans also shared their cleverness. They studied Lunara's land, its forests, rivers, and hills. They taught the Lunarans how to use these things as defenses. Captain Reyes, a strategist with quick hands and quicker words, drew maps in the dirt. "Here," he said, pointing to a narrow valley. "If the Draxol march through, we will trap them. We will roll stones from the cliffs. Here in the forest we will dig hidden pits. And in the rivers we will place nets to catch their machines." The Lunarans listened, wide-eyed. They had never thought of using their world this way. To them the forests were sacred, the rivers a gift. But now, under human guidance, they began to see their land as an ally in survival. Farmers who once planted seeds now built wooden traps. Artists who once carved statues now carved sharp stakes. Children learned to run messages swiftly from village to village. Every person found a role. Not all were convinced. Some Lunarans still doubted. Counselor Saren often shook his head when he saw the training. "We are not meant for this," he muttered. "We are changing too much. These humans are making us like them, harsh, loud, wild. What will become of us?" But Lyra always answered calmly. "We are not becoming them, Saren. We are learning from them. They are showing us strength we already had but never used." Her words carried weight, and many Lunarans began to believe her. One day, during a training exercise, a group of Lunarans failed to lift a heavy wooden beam. They struggled and nearly gave up. Then Commander Ward stepped forward. "On Earth," he said, "we have a saying, when one falls, the others lift." He called for everyone to help. Together, humans and Lunarans, they pushed the beam up, slowly but surely. When it finally stood upright, cheers rose across the field. That moment became a lesson. Alone, the Lunarans were weak. But together, with each other and with the humans, they were strong. The humans also shared something unexpected: stories. Around the fires at night, they spoke of Earth. They told tales of oceans that roared with storms, mountains that touched the clouds, deserts of endless sand. They told of ancient times when humans fought each other, and of times when they came together to build wonders. They spoke of mistakes, but also of victories. The Lunarans listened with shining eyes. To them, Earth sounded harsh and dangerous, but it was also alive, full of courage and survival. The humans had endured so much, and yet here they were, standing on a foreign world, helping strangers. "You are not monsters. one young Lunaran said softly after a story. You are. Fire given shape. The humans only smiled, though some eyes grew wet at the words. As weeks passed, change spread across Lunara. Villages once silent with fear now buzzed with activity. Training fields filled with the sound of striking wood and shouted commands. Families built stronger homes with human guidance. Scouts kept watch from hills reporting movements of the Draxal. For the first time since the invasion began, the Lunarans felt they could fight back. But it was not just strength of body. The humans taught them strength of spirit. When a Lunaran stumbled, a human pulled them up. When someone doubted, a human spoke words of steel. You can do this. You are stronger than you know. Never give up. Slowly, the Lunarans began to repeat those words themselves. They encouraged each other, lifted each other, and believed in each other. One evening, Lyra stood on a hill, watching the training below. The sight filled her with wonder. Her people, once fragile, were running, shouting, striking. Their robes were torn, their hands dirty, their faces fierce. She turned to Commander Ward beside her. You have changed us, she said. Ward shook his head. No, you were always capable. We only showed you what was already inside you. Lyra smiled. For the first time, she truly believed that Lunara had a chance. Yet danger was close. Reports came that the Draxal fleet was gathering again. Larger this time, with more machines, more soldiers. The air grew heavy with the knowledge of coming battle. The Lunarans trembled, but they did not run. Instead, they trained harder. They built more defenses. They prepared side by side with the humans. The Draxal thought Lunara weak. Soon they would learn otherwise. That night, as the beacon tower pulsed its soft light into the sky, Lyra stood beneath it once more. She remembered the night she had sent the first message, her voice trembling with desperation. Now her voice was steady. We are not helpless anymore, she whispered. Because the stars sent us monsters, and those monsters taught us how to stand. The twin moons shone above, silver and calm. The fields below were alive with training cries and the clash of wooden weapons. The strength of humanity had taken root in Lunara, and soon the Draxal would face it. The twin sons of Lunara rose over fields no longer silent. Once the silver plains had only heard songs of peace. Now they echoed with the sounds of training, shouts, strikes, and the steady rhythm of marching feet. The Lunarans, once gentle and untested, now carried wooden spears and sharpened tools. They ran across the fields under the watchful eyes of their human teachers. But no amount of training could hide the shadow spreading across the skies. The Draxal were coming. Scouts reported fleets gathering in orbit greater than before. The Dominion had learned that Lunara resisted. Now they meant to crush that spark of defiance. Commander Elias Ward stood on the balcony of Aurelia's Crystal Hall, his sharp eyes fixed on the horizon. The sky looked calm, painted in soft shades of blue and gold. But he knew it would not last. They will strike soon, he said. His voice was low, steady, but filled with weight. Beside him, Lyra clasped her hands. Our people are afraid, she admitted. They see the sky and think of fire. They wonder if we will survive. Ward turned to her. Fear is normal. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's choosing to stand even when fear fills you. Remind them of that. They must believe, Lyra nodded. She had once doubted, but now she carried the human strength in her heart. The day came sooner than expected. It began with a low rumble, like thunder, though the skies were clear. Then the shadows appeared, dozens of dark Draxal ships tearing through the clouds. Their shapes were jagged, their edges glowing with harsh light. The ground trembled as their engines roared. The Lunarans froze in their villages, staring upward. Children cried out and parents held them close. Memories of burning towers and broken homes rushed back. But this time the humans were ready. Sirens echoed across Aurelia. Human soldiers moved swiftly, guiding Lunarans into shelters, preparing defenses along the fields and forests. Traps hidden beneath the earth were set. Nets and spikes stretched across narrow passes. Watchers on the cliffs readied their signals. Ward gathered his officers, Mara, Reyes, and others. His face was stern, but his voice was steady. We cannot outnumber them, but we will outthink them. Use the land. Use surprise. We strike fast and vanish before they know what happened. This is how we win. The humans saluted. The Lunarans, watching from nearby, felt a fire grow inside them. These strangers, once feared as monsters, now stood as their shield. The first wave of Draxal ships descended near the Silver Forest. They poured out soldiers in black armor, their machines towering like beasts. The forest floor shook under their march, but the humans and Lunarans were waiting. Hidden in the trees, they watched silently. Commander Ward raised his hand, then dropped it. From the cliffs above, massive stones rolled down, smashing into the Draxel lines. The forest came alive with movement, nets dropping, pits opening, wooden spikes snapping upward. The Draxel were caught off guard, their tight formation broken. Then the humans struck. With shouts, they rushed forward, using their strange weapons that fired light and sound. The Lunarans, carrying spears and sharpened tools, followed behind, voices rising in unison. The Draxel, used to easy victories, stumbled in shock. They had never seen such fierce resistance from a world they thought weak. The battle spread across the forest. The humans moved quickly, striking and vanishing into cover. They fought like storms, sudden and overwhelming. The Lunarans mirrored them, moving with newfound courage. One young Lunaran farmer named Kale struck down a Draxol machine with a tool once used for harvesting grain. Another, a singer named Alira, led a group with her clear voice, their chants shaking the hearts of their allies. For the first time, the Lunarans were not only survivors, they were fighters. Lyra watched from the edge of the forest, guiding villagers to safety and sending signals to the fighters. Her heart raced with both fear and pride. Her people, once helpless, now stood against their enemy. The Draxel were furious. Their commanders barked orders, sending in heavier machines. Towers of metal with glowing cannons rolled into the forest, blasting trees apart. Commander Ward saw the threat and called out, "Reyes, the river plan, now!" Captain Reyes led a group to the water's edge where nets and weights had been hidden. At Ward's signal, they cut the lines. The nets sprang upward, entangling the machines. With shouts, humans and Lunarans pushed boulders into the river, creating sudden floods that swept the trapped machines away. The Lunarans cheered as the mighty machines toppled, carried by the force of their own planet. The fighting raged for hours. Smoke filled the skies and fire lit the horizon. The Lunarans sang as they fought, their voices rising above the chaos. The humans, rough and determined, pushed forward with iron will. At last, as the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, the Draxel began to retreat. Their forces pulled back to their ships, dragging broken machines with them. The battlefield grew quiet, save for the heavy breathing of those who remained. The ground was scarred, the trees broken, but Lunara still stood. The humans gathered their allies, checking wounds, carrying the weak. The Lunarans, though tired and shaken, lifted their heads high. They had done what once seemed impossible. They had faced the Draxel and they had won. That night, Aurelia glowed with light. The people gathered in the crystal hall and across the fields. Songs rose into the sky, songs not of sorrow but of victory. Lyra stood before the crowd, her voice steady and clear. We once thought ourselves too weak to stand. We once believed only the stars could save us. But tonight we see the truth. The stars sent us not saviors but teachers. They sent us the strength of Earth. And together we have become something new. The crowd cheered, their voices echoing through the night. Children laughed, families embraced, and hope shone brighter than it had in many cycles. The humans stood among them, smiling quietly. They did not join the songs, but their eyes softened as they watched. For all their roughness, they understood. Yet Ward knew this was only the beginning. Later, as the celebration continued, he walked to the edge of the city, staring at the stars. Mara joined him, her braided hair glinting in the moonlight. "They think the war is over," she said. Ward shook his head. "The Draxel will come again, stronger. They won't accept defeat from what they call a weak world. This was only the first fire." Mara's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready." Ward nodded slowly. "Yes, because now they believe in themselves. And that belief is more dangerous to the Draxel than any weapon we carry." Far above, in the darkness of space, the Draxel fleet regrouped. Their commanders snarled, their pride wounded. Reports of defeat spread quickly among them, but so too did whispers spread across the stars. Whispers of a world once weak, now defended by strange, powerful allies. Whispers of Earth, the monsters who answered a cry for help, and who fought with fire in their hearts. The legend was beginning. And as the people of Lunara slept, safe for one more night, the sky above them still burned with the memory of battle. The fire in the sky had not destroyed them. It had lit a flame within them, a flame that would not die. The sky over Lunara was calm once more, though the ground still bore the scars of battle. Trees had fallen, rivers ran muddy with the rush of displaced water, and the silver fields were pitted with craters. Smoke lingered in the distance, but the people no longer feared it. They had seen the Draxel flee, and in that victory, they had found something far greater than safety: courage. The Lunarans moved through the streets of Aurelia in cautious wonder. Their robes, once perfect and flowing, were torn and smudged with dirt, yet their faces shone with pride. Villagers helped rebuild homes, cleared paths, and planted new seeds where fire had burned. Every task was lighter because they now understood that they had the strength to survive. Lyra walked among them, her eyes bright. She had not only watched their training and battles, she had fought alongside them. Her hand still carried faint scars from wooden spears and falling beams, but she did not mind. These marks were proof of something far more important: a people rising to meet a threat and refusing to fall. The humans prepared to leave soon. Supplies were running low and they had responsibilities back on Earth. Still, they did not rush. They wanted to ensure that the Lunarans could stand on their own before departing. Commander Elias Ward gathered the Lunarans in Aurelia's central square. The people formed a large circle, their faces a mix of curiosity and respect. Even Counselor Saren, who had once doubted the humans' presence, stood quietly at the back. Ward stepped forward. "We have seen what courage looks like. We have seen what hope can do. You, the people of Lunara, have learned to fight, not just with weapons but with your hearts. That is more important than anything we can teach you." Lyra raised her hand. "We will never forget what you have done for us," she said. "You did not come to conquer. You came to save us. You gave us strength when we had none. You showed us how to believe in ourselves." The humans looked around, their eyes softening. Sergeant Mara, who had shouted and trained so fiercely, smiled faintly. "That is what we hoped for," she said. "Not to make warriors, but to awaken what was already there." The first part of the farewell was quiet. The humans packed their supplies, cleaned their equipment, and inspected the remaining defenses one last time. Villagers helped, offering food and water, curious about these strange beings who had once seemed terrifying. Children hovered nearby, asking questions about Earth. Some touched the humans' armor, fascinated by its weight and shine. One small girl reached for Mara's braided hair, tugging gently. Mara laughed, letting her braid swing back into place. "You'll be ready," she said. "All of you." Lyra watched these small interactions and felt a deep warmth. This bond, born in fear and struggle, had grown into trust, respect, and admiration. It was more than alliance, it was friendship. Before leaving, Ward gathered a small council of Lunarans and humans. They walked to the edge of a cliff overlooking the silver forest. From here, the fleet of human ships could be seen, ready to depart. "Your world is no longer helpless," Ward said, pointing to the forests, rivers, and valleys. "You have the land as your ally. You have traps, tools, and plans. Most importantly, you have courage. That is the greatest defense of all." Counselor Saren, still cautious, asked, "But what if they return?" "The Draxel are not defeated, they will strike again." Ward's eyes were sharp. "Then you fight again. You fight with what you've learned. And if ever you cannot, call for help. But remember, your first victory was earned by you, not by us. That is the power you now carry." Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder. "We understand," she said. "And we will not forget." The human ship slowly lifted from the fields, engines humming with controlled power. Lunarans watched in awe as the machines rose, carrying the people who had once seemed monsters. Some wept quietly, feeling the weight of farewell. Others stood tall, proud of what they had achieved together. Ward and his officers waved from the decks. Mara, Reyes, and others nodded to the people below. The ships ascended higher, catching the light of Lunara's twin suns. Then, as if carried by the stars themselves, they vanished into the sky, leaving silence in their wake. For a moment, the Lunarans simply stared. Then Lyra raised her voice, soft but strong, and began to sing. One by one, others joined. The song was not a mourning, but a celebration, a song of hope, courage, and unity. It rose into the heavens, reaching the stars that had heard their original cry. In the days after the humans' departure, Lunara changed. The people rebuilt their cities stronger than before. They cleared the forests of Draxal remnants, built watchtowers along rivers and valleys, and trained together regularly. What had once seemed impossible, resistance, defense, survival, was now part of daily life. The Lunarans discovered that courage was not only in weapons and strategy. It was in community, in caring for each other, and in standing firm when fear pressed close. Every person, young and old, had a role to play. Every voice, every hand, every heart mattered. Even Counselor Saren admitted it quietly. "They showed us strength," he said one evening to Lyra. "Not just theirs, but ours. We were blind to it before." Lyra smiled. "Yes, the stars sent them because they knew we needed help. But they also knew we had the power to learn it." Months passed and peace returned, though it was now a different peace. Lunara was no longer naive, no longer fragile. Its people carried the memory of battle, the teachings of Earth, and the courage they had earned. They sent messages into the stars, not of desperation, but of friendship and alliance. The beacon tower, once a call for help, now pulsed with confidence. It broadcasted the message, "We are Lunara, we are free, and we are ready to stand together with those who answer the stars." Lyra often stood beneath the tower at night watching the sky. She remembered the day she first sent the cry, trembling with fear and hope. She remembered the humans, fierce and rough, stepping onto her world. And she remembered the lesson they had left. Courage grows when shared, and strength multiplies when hearts unite. The story of the humans' arrival spread across the galaxy. Other worlds whispered of the monsters of Earth, not as creatures of terror, but as guardians sent by the cosmos. Where once Lunara had been weak, it was now a symbol of hope. A world that had called out in despair and had learned to fight alongside allies of incredible strength. And though the Draxol still lurked in distant stars, no one doubted that Lunara would stand. Not alone, not ever again. The stars had heard their cry, and Earth had answered. Lyra looked toward the horizon where the twin moons hung low. Were they monsters? She asked softly to herself. She smiled, understanding the answer. Perhaps. But monsters who became our saviors. Monsters who taught us how to rise. The wind carried her words across the silver fields. The people of Lunara, strong, brave, and united, lifted their voices in song once more. The stars heard them, and this time the galaxy listened.